Okay, we are on, and I'm Veronica Jean's e-commerce coach, and I have Amy, the sales tax yogi, with me today, and we are going to be talking about sales tax, how to prepare, and what to do in your e-commerce store, right, Amy?
Yes, absolutely. So thanks for having me on, and it's always awesome to talk to you and your people. Hopefully we'll get some audience engagement today. I can't see the live feed, so if you're getting questions or whatnot, just like toss them over to me. So I guess we want to talk about things in general, but I hate to do it, but I am going to start out a little bit with the COVID-19 stuff, just to let people know what's going on, what the state legislatures are doing, and how the departments of revenue are handling this thing. One of the reasons I created what I call Sales Tax Yogi is because I find myself with my clients so often saying, it's okay, slow down, take a deep breath. And that is the case here too with the coronavirus, and it's slowing down commerce and things like that.
Yes.
Even some of my larger clients, people that we honestly wouldn't have expected, have reached out to us and said, what's the worst that happens if I can't pay my sales taxes this month? Just because they're in a cash flow bind or whatever.
Yes, and they're going to be, because business is definitely slowing down. I mean, that's across the board. Yes.
Yeah. So at first, when this question was posed to us, the first time it came to us was Monday. I mean, it was like rapid fire clients reaching out. I'd say we've had like 4 clients so far out of a book of business of like 125 maybe. So not so bad yet.
Yes.
But at first we didn't have answers for them because the states didn't have responses. But let me look at my notes that I made for us today. There are 5 states so far that have actively rolled out communication to taxpayers for what they're doing.
Fabulous. And who are they?
Yeah. California, Maryland, Michigan, North Carolina, and Washington State.
Okay.
I'm sure that list will grow very quickly. And I'm sure that if you reached out to whatever state you're concerned about, you could probably get some relief. And like, for instance, the Washington State thing is new as of today. Yesterday, I was talking to a Washington State auditor on a completely unrelated issue. And I asked, do you know what you're doing right now, what the state's response is going to be? And she said, we don't have anything official yet, but we are working with taxpayers because we know that this is hard. So, I think any state that you reach out to will give you a response like that as they begin to roll out real rules. The one thing I will caution your people on, however, California specifically, yes, they are providing relief. I think for the next couple of months, they're extending deadlines out like 90 days without penalty and interest. Couple things. If you can file but not pay, I would take that step, right? Disclosing to the state what your liability should be, but if you, from a cash flow point of view, if you can't pay, then that's another thing.
Yes.
You also have to contact the state. You have to, in some cases, actually apply.
Yes.
And the states have rapidly rolled out online portals. So you can't just go not paying your bills.
No, I would rather approach than ignore. Rather, you have to go and ask. And it is, rather go and explain and ask.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, and some of them in the online portal, you might be asked, excuse me, my allergies are acting up on top of all this stuff. You might be asked to prove financial hardship directly related to the COVID-19 outbreak. So I don't know specifically because I haven't had to take this approach yet for any of my clients, but I do know that the states are rolling things out to help out. So I just wanted to start with that at the top of our discussion here.
Exactly.
So then, I suppose, rolling it back to kind of like business as usual.
Yes.
You and I have been talking about sales tax stuff for, we met, 18 months ago, 2 years ago now?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, and when you and I met Wayfair, the Supreme Court's ruling back in June of 18, we might have even met like before the ruling was officially done.
It was
kind
sort of
knew that it was
rolling.
coming,
Yes, sort of rolling out.
It was immediately after
Yes.
the Supreme Court's ruling.
Yes.
And at first, because the Supreme Court was pretty, what we thought anyway, pretty
Yes.
clear on the limitations of what these rules needed to be, we thought, this will be a slow burn.
Yes,
We'll see.
exactly.
Well,
exactly.
Within 12 months, 45 states had new legislation
Yes.
around this new concept called economic nexus. And so since you deal with e-commerce folks,
Yes.
this is a realm for their business that they've not really had to worry about before. So now that it's been a couple of years, I mean, we're coming up on June 2020, although this week it is only Thursday, which
and things are already changing, right?
What did I see on Instagram this morning? What a year this week has been.
Yes. I mean, it's just been crazy, right?
And for those of us with kids at home suddenly and trying to work full time, it's been an adventure. So anyway, now that we're coming up on 2 years after the Wayfair ruling, things have kind of settled, but we are still seeing the states kind of, with some give and take. Initially, there were revenue thresholds, and also, and this was the biggest concern for your e-commerce folks, especially the smaller businesses, was that transaction count.
Yes.
Right? I mean, it was one thing for there to be $100,000 annual economic threshold, but it was something else entirely for it to be 200 transactions.
Yes.
We are seeing many of the states roll those transaction counts back.
Oh, wonderful. That's the best news ever. Yes. I mean, if can you imagine some of them are doing $5 items,
I know.
or $2.50 items, and I mean they are selling a lot of them, and just to do this little bits of amounts everywhere is going to drive anybody nuts.
I know, and then the cost of compliance and the cost, even the really low cost options for software solutions and add-ons to Shopify and then also the apps like Avalara and the other one. Well, there's TaxJar
and Avalara we've got, and
those are probably the ones that your folks are most familiar with because they're the lower cost options. At my company's scale of the game, we use things like Sabrix, Vertex, enterprise level.
Exactly. Now we don't use them yet. No, we'd like to get there, but
right?
Yes, that's the goal. That's the goal, right?
Well, and to that point, with Avalara and maybe with TaxJar, but I don't
probably the
know.
Same.
Avalara has the two components, right?
Yes.
Because there's the filing piece where they'll handle your online filings for you.
Yes.
But there's also, as your business grows and you want to stay up to date with proper tax rates and that kind of thing,
yes.
you can have the AvaTax bolt onto your Shopify store and it'll do real-time rate calculation.
Yes.
But man, that gets expensive.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
You're paying, I don't know what the rates are sometimes depending on your volume, but upwards of what, like 45 cents a transaction?
I know,
or
that's
something?
ridiculous. I mean, you're already being charged you're already losing money on each transaction, which is like 2.something% plus 30 cents per transaction. And now they're charging more. I mean, everybody's being charged to death right now,
Yeah, and so, there are ways around that. If you're a relatively small seller, if you're brick and mortar and you primarily sell in only a handful of locations, keeping your own rates up to date is not as hard.
No.
But anyway, I'm not knocking anybody. I think all these solutions, it's a heck of a lot better than when I started out and we were running all this stuff on spreadsheets, right?
Yes, exactly.
I've been at this a minute.
Yes.
So, but where were we? We were talking about filing.
The rollouts.
Oh, the roll on Wayfair, right.
Yes.
So the transaction count is kind of rolling
back. Yes.
And I can get you an updated list of those.
Brilliant.
Some of the states are increasing their thresholds. California, New York, and Texas are $500,000.
That's fabulous because Maine was like $2,000 or something stupid, and Washington D.C. was like $1,000 or something. It was ridiculous.
And Kansas is like, screw the thresholds. You sell one thing here, and we got you.
And so
that one's being challenged in the court. So we'll see. So we thought, because the Supreme Court really did put pretty strict limits on this, and plus also made a lot of comments about the Streamlined Sales Tax Project and affordability in terms of compliance and whatnot, and honestly the states completely ignored it.
Yes.
And just went gangbusters. And then you have states like Colorado and Louisiana where each locality makes its own rules.
Each parish, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they've jumped in and said, well, if you have Nexus in Louisiana, you got Nexus here.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's Wayfair, and we've all kind of become familiar with that.
Yes, exactly. Especially if you're in the e-commerce sphere, right?
Yeah. And then, out of curiosity, the folks that you work with, and you might not know this answer off the top of your head, do they do direct-to-consumer on their own Shopify sites and then also sell on platforms like eBay, Etsy, Amazon, that kind of thing?
Yes.
Yeah,
all of them.
That brings up marketplace rules.
Yes, exactly. And that's something different again.
And again, when you and I first met, one of the very first times we chatted, Wayfair was brand new, but I said, there's this other thing that is coming down the pipe, and it's going to roll out faster than even as quickly as Wayfair.
Yes.
And I was right.
Yes.
I think to this point we have 35 states that have marketplace rules.
Yes.
Although I did get caught off guard. I was having a pretty significant discussion with a business partner of a client who was pushing back really hard on their approach to their Florida sales tax. And I was like, look, in a week, we're going to have marketplace and Wayfair rules in Florida. You might as well just give up the ghost now. And then the governor went and pulled the legislation like 3 days before it was supposed to pass and made me look like an idiot. But whatever, it happens.
So what is explain again what is marketplace?
So marketplace came quick on the heels of Wayfair, and I think the states rapidly realized that suddenly they have all these tiny taxpayers, and it's going to be really hard to keep track of. And you know what? It's a lot easier to deal with one entity.
Yes, exactly.
On a larger scale than to deal with all these mom and pops. And so, plus it also kind of has to do with the fact that the state of New York sued Amazon a few years ago. We all thought that was going to be the Supreme Court case, by the way.
Yes.
And so they said, if you sell on Amazon, because they help with back office, because they handle refunds, because they're handling so many of the parts of your business, really you're a supplier and they are the retailer of record.
Yes.
And so we think therefore they should be the ones responsible for the sales tax filings and payments.
Exactly, yeah.
And I'll tell you, marketplace is awesome for some. But I think it's also a little bit of the law of unintended consequences. It also makes things really complicated for some taxpayers when they have both Amazon and direct-to-consumer, and maybe they even sell on Etsy or eBay or any number of platforms, and then never minding affiliate programs, right?
Exactly.
And so then you have to look out for the intersection of Wayfair and Marketplace, and that is, the states have different rules because they all like to do their own thing about how the two thresholds interact with each other.
Because Amazon takes taxes, doesn't matter what, there's no threshold. Etsy takes taxes now, no threshold. So does eBay.
Right.
So,
Right, and that's because technically a lot of the marketplace rules actually do have the same thresholds as Wayfair.
Yes.
But if you're talking about Amazon, they cross any threshold, immediately, which is why anybody who's selling through those platforms in a marketplace state automatically needs to set up the tax calculation. But that's another thing too. You got to check your settings in your Amazon account and make sure that you've got tax collection turned on where you're supposed to, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
And then. Just a minute ago, we were talking about how the states are rolling back the transaction count thresholds.
Yes.
On the one hand, that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, though, the question we get most often is, well, what if I registered because I crossed the Wayfair threshold and then the state rolled back?
Yes. Oh, yes. That's a good question. Yes, absolutely.
Or what if I registered for Wayfair and then the state rolled out marketplace rules and I only sell on Amazon?
Yes.
Well, yet again, the states don't all align. Some of the states have gone so far. Connecticut comes to mind top of my head. I know there are a list of probably 8 or 10 others where you're actually required to maintain dual registration.
You do?
And yeah.
So Wayfair and marketplace.
Yeah, and so what you end up having to do is maintaining a seller's permit, a sales tax account,
yes,
and then filing a form that basically puts a deduction line item for all of your marketplace sales. So you declare your revenue,
yes,
which is all Amazon.
yes,
You deduct your revenue, which is all Amazon.
yes.
It comes out to net zero, but you still have to file the form.
Yes. I mean, if you think about states anyway, I mean, if just from a sales tax point, you still have to say you made zero sales tax or have zero sales, even every single month or whenever. Yes, exactly. So that makes sense.
Yeah, and some of this, and again, because the states are learning right along with us, some of the other things that we've seen are if you had to register. And the state initially said you have to file your return, but everything on your Amazon platform is deductible.
Yes.
Then they have gone and said, well, okay, that's a paperwork nightmare. So you can file a form that basically gives you permission to not file or only file like once a year.
Oh yes, that makes sense as well.
It's like an affidavit.
Yes.
That says, yeah, I'm a registered taxpayer. But please don't make me file every month because Amazon's going to take care of that for me.
Yes.
So we're seeing lots of moves and changes.
So that's a good tip to have, is just file even if you don't do anything and make sure that you tick the right box.
Yeah.
So especially if you're just using Amazon or something,
Yeah, and some of the states have. Now, granted, a lot of this stuff is done online, so any changes to forms and whatnot, most taxpayers won't even know. Like they're just filling in. They're just following the bouncing ball online,
yes,
right?
Exactly.
They're not. But some of the states, they've either modified their filing to include marketplace sales.
Yes.
Or, like New York, they have a whole form separate for marketplace filers. So you just kind of got to go state by state and look at what the what the
especially
rules are.
and then keep an eye on where you're selling, right? Because I know that what's the limit to California is now 500,000?
It's 500,000 and there is no transaction count.
Okay, cool. As I know, one of my ex-clients, he was selling a lot to California, and I know that they were worried about Washington D.C. But you know what they do is they just go, it's not worth it. The $2.57 that we have to pay is just not worth it. I'm not selling there, so and that's a decision you can make as well, is deciding which states you want to sell into, because 1 or 2 sales is not going to make or break you.
That is true. Excuse me. And while I never ever advocate for people to not follow the rules,
yes,
to some extent from a business standpoint, you also look at risk assessments in terms of audits and that kind of thing. And
exactly.
So, on the one hand, you can say it's $2.50. It's not worth selling into that state.
Yes.
On the other hand, you can say it's $2.50. Is the state really going to care?
But I have clients, and I agree with you. And I have clients that don't worry about it, but I have clients that, they are. It's a worry. They do not want to get into trouble. You don't want to raise any red flags. So they just and here's the thing: is how are 52 states or 49 states actually that I suggest them normally selling in. I don't suggest selling in the big island of America. What's called
Hawaii.
Hawaii, Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico.
Guam. Any of these, because it's just ridiculous.
Puerto Rico's an adventure, because if you ever do get an assessment letter from them,
yes,
they require that you show up in person to dispute it. How the hell is that?
No, you're kidding.
So we actually have some partner firms and partner lawyers that help us out with that, because we have this one client that for whatever reason the island keeps saying you're not filing and paying on time, and we have all this documented proof that says yes we are, but they really do require a person to show up. You can't just scan it, email it, you can't mail it, you got it, somebody's got to be there. It's the strangest thing. So
well, and I mean Namibia, where I'm from originally, they just went online, and my mom does taxes and sales tax and taxes for for small companies, and she up to now has gone personally, driven to the tax office, and everybody knows Mrs. van der Ploeg, and so so now she's online. She goes, oh my God, we're online, this is so awesome, we can just click a button, so instead of spending 3 hours at the tax office arguing with them, so they're very happy she's not visiting.
What's that?
I said they're very happy she's not visiting anymore.
Oh. Yeah. Oh goodness. So and then one last thing about Amazon, and I be careful with, depending on how you're selling on Amazon,
yes.
if you're using FBA and if you've got inventory stashed. Right now and in the last couple of years, especially for e-commerce folks like you guys, the focus has been on economic nexus.
Yes, exactly.
But do not overlook the traditional
nexus,
physical presence, nexus requirements. So the high points that will create a physical presence and a filing requirement are salespeople going into a region to solicit sales, especially if like contracts or whatnot are signed in that location.
Oh yes, the contract signed in that location. Yes, exactly.
Yep. Any fixed assets for whatever reason, if you have an office set up, a satellite office, anything like that. If you're providing services, I know what your focus is e-com, but
yes,
if you're going into a state more than just a handful times in 12 months to perform a service, go to a trade show, that kind of thing. But the area where Amazon folks get really tripped up is inventory. And you don't even always have control over where Amazon ships your inventory. But that is a physical presence in those states, and they can ask you.
Yes. So I have a question. I have a question about, so if you are, for instance, if you're at a show, okay, and you are selling, if you got salespeople selling, then and I mean, even if it's verbal, it's a contract being said. Okay, I'm buying this stuff from you. Is that selling in the state?
Well, I mean, it could be, but if you're talking about a trade show, most of the states have exclusions for like a minimal amount of contact. And trade shows are the biggest one. Typically, for states that actually have specific rules around this, you get 3 times in 12 months to dip your toes into a state before they start asking for taxes.
Okay, I've got one client who is starting, they're going to start selling at shows, and obviously going to happen here in maybe North Carolina, where they actually live, and we're looking at New Mexico probably, but yes. And I mean, when they sell, it's like $20,000, $50,000 worth on the day. So that's and they actually physically sell the stuff right there and then, as well as get commissions.
Yeah, that's a tricky one, and bringing up commissions is a good point. Even if you don't have salespeople per se, but if you've got agents or affiliates and you're paying them on a commission basis, then that can create nexus, and that's a big thing in like the direct selling world.
Yes, exactly.
And most of the consultant independent contractors, many states actually have what's called an MLM agreement with the larger company that all of these consultants are selling for. And even though technically the consultant is the salesperson, and sales tax is due on those transactions when they sell, the states, kind of like Marketplace, have said, we don't want to chase all these people down.
No.
And so the companies typically handle that on behalf of their consultants.
Yeah, that I know as well. Most of them probably do handle it, but you do get smaller companies just starting out on the marketing on the LMN whatever side.
MLM, multi-level marketing.
That you have to be careful of what you wish for, right? Yes.
Yeah. Cool. So what else? I think you and I had talked about something kind of quick and easy, like the 5 things that a business wants to know and do as they're setting up sales tax.
Yes.
So the first thing, which we've covered extensively on this chat already, is know where you need to collect.
Yes.
Those are traditional Nexus rules, and then obviously Wayfair and Marketplace rules. And then drop shipping. How many of your folks are into that?
Several, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. So that one gets complicated. A quick sidebar. We have a client, a new client who is the drop shipper, right? So there's the seller, the buyer, and then the guy in the middle that most times the buyer doesn't even know exists, right? That drop ship it. And the states, man, depending on where the buyer is registered, where the seller is registered, sorry, not the buyer is registered, but where the buyer is located, where the seller is registered for sales tax, and then where the drop shipper is registered for sales tax. The states, of course, all have disparate rules as to whether the drop shipper or the seller are responsible for collecting.
Okay.
And then whether or not the drop shipper can give a resale certificate to the seller.
Yes.
So that it absolves the drop shipper of any responsibility for collecting sales tax.
Most of the time that happens anyway. You have to give them your resale. So you are responsible. So, but okay, continue. I've got a question.
Sorry, I'm trying to mute my mic while I'm coughing at you. I apologize. What's your question? Go ahead.
Okay, so I have a situation here. So they have a physical presence here in Texas, and they have a physical presence in Louisiana, and they sell some of they've got several drop shippers. So they have some in Texas, and obviously the very large companies have several places where they actually ship the stuff from. So and they have tax agreements with, they've shown them their tax, so they are, who's responsible for the tax? Not the drop shipper, because they.
Right. So this is one of those things where, generally speaking, it's difficult to give you a
quick answer. Yes.
However, feel free to send me the specifics. I have this matrix that would
brilliant. Cross. Because I'm just thinking now when we just started launching, we've just done a soft launch, and we're about ready to we're starting to do on do social and get more involved with some little bit of advertising, and we're doing it very slowly because it's complicated. But so I need to I'll probably have to show you it to you on a graph.
No, because just yesterday we were on the phone with this client, and we've been going round and round for a couple of weeks trying to develop a resale certificate collection letter that was sort of universal, that they could give to their sellers. That sort of had this decision tree of well, if you're located here and registered there, you need to give us this form and that form. And it was getting really complicated.
Wow.
And we were worried that the people we were going to send this to weren't going to understand it, and we're going to just throw it away.
Yeah.
And I said, let's flip this on its head. Let's try something else. Instead of asking them what they think they need to send to us, we're going to send them a questionnaire that says, where are you registered? What are your permit numbers? What date did you begin being registered there? And do you have a resale certificate in those states? And then based on their response, and then based on us knowing where our dropshipper client is sending stuff to, then we will go back to them based on our decision matrix and say, awesome, fill out this form.
That's
because getting them to try to understand, because dropshipping is probably the single most complicated thing that we do, especially with e-commerce. So we've decided to kind of turn it on its head, and instead of getting them to interpret stuff, we're asking basic questions. We do the interpretation for them, and then say, okay, great, based on these facts you've given us, fill out this form.
And that's for the drop shipper.
Well, in this case, the drop shipper is our client, and so we're giving this to their seller partners, but it could go either way.
That's a good idea, actually, to think about that, because I mean, they are going to come up against this as well, especially with these guys. It's just complicated, and they haven't even started yet, and they could be $1 million company within a year. Awesome. No problem, because of the size. I know, right? But it's the size of products that they're selling, which is pipes and and blowers and industrial stuff. So I mean, and they're already selling. We haven't even started yet, officially started yet, you know, so they're already selling.
Yeah.
And we haven't told you know, we haven't put it out there. So it's going to be very exciting once we start, but we have to have all our ducks in a row, which the shipping part was a problem, you know. It's like we had I have different locations where products are coming from, and some of the products coming from 2 locations, and it's like, we can't do that.
Yeah, that can happen. We have run into situations where you have a 4-party drop shipping relationship, and that's just a whole different situation.
Yes.
But, anyway, so coming back around, so knowing where you need to collect tax, that's kind of the number one thing. And then knowing how to get registered. Each state has its own requirements sometimes, like in the state of New York, it's online, it's instantaneous, one and done. Other places you have to register with the Secretary of State first. It takes time to process. Florida takes like 3 business days, even though it's an online filing. So just kind of knowing, you know, how to get registered and what you need. And then making sure you know what the rates are. We touched on that already. And the different tools available. Knowing how to manage exemptions, drop ship it. We just talked about that. And then the last thing, and knowing what your deadlines are.
Super important.
And then
put them on your calendar.
Especially for smaller businesses. And this comes back around to the very top of our call with cash flow constraints.
Oh, yes,
when
exactly.
you are setting up your sales tax. When you are setting up your business banking. I highly recommend, not only in your QuickBooks or whatever accounting, that you have a separate accounting for sales tax, but that you have a separate account for sales tax, because that money does not belong to you. And it is very tempting, especially for small businesses in cash flow crunches, to try to play games with the timing of the cash flow. And then suddenly the deadline comes. Or something catastrophic and completely unpredictable happens.
Like now.
And that money's not there.
Like now.
And so really, really, really recommend. I know it's hard to do it on the fly with every transaction, but even if it's a separate accounting, even if it's on an Excel spreadsheet, when you enter that invoice into your record keeping, you've got one for the revenue and one for the taxes. And, you know, if it's weekly or whatever, do a sweep of your bank account and pull that money aside.
Pull it immediately. So, it's not your money, right? It's not your money.
It's the same concept as a savings account, right?
Exactly.
When you have an employer and they recommend that you just have that money direct deposited so you never see it. Exact same thing with sales tax.
I know, because it's tempting because it's in the account. You go, I've got $1,200, but you don't, right? So and you're going to get into trouble with sales, especially if you have to pay every month. Just make sure that that's the first thing that comes out of your account. You don't touch it. It goes into I call it a slush fund. The slush fund. But
it is tempting. I have been a small business owner. I have been in that cash crunch. I'll admit it. We have had to dip into those funds. But that is really scary. And that money doesn't belong to you. No,
that's like pinching money from somebody else.
So those I don't know. Those are the things that
I think we did great today. I mean, we covered so many things. I bet everybody has to listen to this twice because we did cover a lot of points. You're going to send me,
fast,
me too. So you're going to send me some information that you've written down.
So those I'm actually doing another chat similar to this later in the day, and he asked me to pull together those 5 things. Like what are the he said just boil it down for me. What are the 5 basic things that people really need to know? And so those are them. I can I've got those in an outline and I can send them over to you. Brilliant.
And then probably liked what he writes in between. I would like that too, because if he's going to swing it around to a blog, I would love to post that as well. And add it to our talk, which would be wonderful. Thank you so much for popping in. We are going to totally do this every month, right? And find something to talk about because this is
we covered a lot today.
I think this is so important. People don't realize how important sales tax is, especially if you're starting a business, and it's the last thing they think of. really the last thing they think of. They think, well, let's quickly fling up something up there and start selling, and oh my goodness me, you can't do this legally, and you are responsible for sales tax, all the time.
Yeah.
So I thank you again, and introduce yourself again, so as we're moving out.
Sure, absolutely. My name's Amy Monroe. I'm the sales tax yogi, and if y'all need anything at all, Veronica can point you my direction, and I'm happy to help out anytime.
Absolutely. And I'm Veronica Jeans, and I'm an e-commerce queen and Shopify expert, and I love helping people getting their stuff online as well. Thank you so much for popping in, and
thanks you.
We will see you next month, at least
Excellent.
once a month, right? Okay, bye.
Bye.
Where's my button? I need my button. Go find my button.